Hi, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to tonight's webinar. Uh, just a reminder, if you have questions as we go through, just put it in the Q&A, and then can pick it up there if needed. I don't know about you guys this week, but I've had a very busy week. Lots of projects on the go, lots of things to do, and it got me thinking about work management and work processes. So I thought it would be good this week to talk about decision-driven work process. It's one of the things that I would say, well, every oil company in the world, or every that I'm aware of, large companies, small companies, and in many different areas, all have a very similar way of decision making and working through projects and work. And it's a decision driven way of working. So I'd like to just go through some highlights of that, and then if there's any questions on that or other topics, again, just put it in the Q&A. So what is decision driven work process? Well, a decision driven work process is really trying to avoid doing work that doesn't support the next decision. And that way it makes it very efficient to do activities. You don't do unnecessary work, and all the work that you're doing is really going to support a decision that needs to be made. So I have here a roadmap, sort of a plan showing what it's 5 phases. It is sort of the industry standard. The oil industry standard is 5 phases. Lots of other businesses and sectors also use the same sort of layout. And what it involves, again, 5 phases. Phase 1, identify the opportunity. What is it you're trying to do? Phase 2 is to create and select alternatives. Involves brainstorming and how do you narrow down your options? Then phase 3 is detailed design. That's where you'll do, I would say, your classic engineering that we learn in school. Phase 4 is execution, and this is where what you've designed, you actually go build or execute to reach your goal. And then phase 5 is the execution is done, and hopefully you're having project success. So that's sort of the overview of what each phase is. Some call it phase, some it's a stage, but one of the things you might also hear it referred to as decision gates or decision-based working. And so again, these colors here are just to distinguish which phase you're in. And one of the first things you do in phase 1 is to actually fill in this roadmap. This is just an example template. It's in Excel. It's in PowerPoint. There's special software for it, but the software doesn't matter. It's the idea behind it that does. And so, one of the things, usually the decisions don't change that much across all kinds of different projects. You usually get typically the same sort of decision gate. And so we just look at coming out of phase 1. Usually the question is this strategically aligned? And there's another box here called DM, that's decision maker. So one of the mistakes I've seen people make a lot over the years, and I've been using this since some form of this in one way or the other since the 90s. One of the where people get tripped up on projects a lot or on their work is who is the decision maker. And because sometimes people think they have more decision making power than they actually do, or sometimes it's been deferred, it's been delegated to somebody, but it's not clear. So identifying who the decision maker is for each one of these decisions is a very important step, and it can be a different decision maker for in each phase. A lot of companies have authority levels for how much can be spent, and so that often changes the decision maker, or a functional versus team-based organization. But a lot of times when you put someone down here as a decision maker, that's the easiest way to find out if that's the right person, because you'll be told if it should be someone else. So coming out of phase one, so we'll just go through it. In phase one, you identify the opportunity. And so that is really trying to frame up what it is you're trying to do. And I really like using the term opportunity or opportunity statement. Sometimes you might see it as what is the problem, and I just find problem is a bit of a negative word. So an opportunity, there's always a chance to do something positive. So in phase one, identify the opportunity. Then, is it strategically aligned? And that question, you can have a really good idea, but it might not be something that the organization you're working for, the group that you're working with, that they want to do. Really important. If you can find that out early, then it saves all of this work up front. Or yeah. Then you're going to go into phase two. We're going to create and select alternatives. So this is your brainstorming. This is your ideas. And then really what you want to know, what the decision maker, and it's not what you think, it's what the decision maker thinks, is the best alternative been selected, or has it been selected? That's the recommendation. And these decision boxes here, you see there's arrows going both ways. So the outcome can be, yes, it has been selected, go further and do more work, or no, it hasn't, go back and recycle and do and figure this out a bit more, or I don't like any of these alternatives, stop working on this and switch over to something else. All of those are good outcomes because you're making a decision. And so that goes for each one of these decision points. Once you've selected an alternative and you're going into detailed design, then you're going to do detailed design to the point where you're ready to execute the project. And this is the design ready to execute? So the decision maker determines what's enough engineering been done or enough detailed design been done so that then you can go and execute it. Sometimes that might feel uncomfortable if it's an 80-20 solution, but that's why it's clear who the decision maker is, and okay, is the enough work, are they comfortable enough that enough design is done to go and execute? Because it's never 100% done. On that, have detailed design. This is a lot of times you may hear about in the industry, it'd be an AFE. An AFE is an application for expenditure. So usually these earlier phases are people doing work, engineering work, getting ready. In execution, this is when you are really employing equipment, deploying capital. So the spend level goes way up here in phase, going from phase 3 to phase 4. So this would be normally accompanied by the what's called the project AFE, because really this is the execution project. Then as you go through execution, again, there's another decision point here. Is execution complete? And that means different things to different people. Everybody has their view of what executing a project is. And a lot of times people have a piece of the project to do. Once they get it done, for them, they feel the project execution is complete. But it can continue on with other trades and other disciplines, handing over between departments or operating areas. So it's important to note when execution is done. Then you go into phase 5, which is hopefully you've defined success, what you want the world to look like when you have, after you've done this project. Then you'll have a success phase, and this is where you look back, lessons learned, best practices, what could have gone better, what could have gone worse, and then again, there's a decision here. What have we learned? And there's a decision maker for that. What have we learned from this project? And if we had the opportunity to do more of these, would we do more, or would we not? Or do we have regret, for example? So those are kind of the 5 phases. I see a question in here. Is the same person or group responsible for decision making in every phase of the oil industry process? I would say yes and no. On smaller projects, the same person can be responsible for decision making, but for most projects, say in the millions or billions of dollars, then it's almost never the same person for each one of these decision points. Same person or group. A lot of times, and I use in oil industry, if we're drilling, drilling is executing. Is it complete? That is usually an operations decision, like a production operations or an asset management sort of decision on if something is ready for operations. So I would say typically not, but it's not that it doesn't happen, but typically not. Another question here. How long does each phase typically last? Well, entirely variable. Some, and we can work an example here, but I would say anywhere from a phase can last anywhere from a couple of hours to a couple of years. So that's a bit of a facetious answer, but I've been involved in projects where the execution phase has lasted over multiple years, and like a multi-well drilling campaign or a large facility project, platform construction. Actually, I was associated with one project that lasts for more than 10 years. I didn't stay for the whole project, but this can go on for a long time. Question here again. What are the main factors that can delay or speed up a phase? Well, and I'm a big believer in this. Out here in phase 4, so if you look at the spend profile, when you're here with like the idea, your expenditure, your costs are not very, very high. And then, but as you're probably building the team up as you're getting into more design work, and then as you get into execution, it goes like this. So the spend profile goes up, and the amount of effort goes up. So the thing that can speed up a project or add value to a project, and this has been proven in multiple studies on project management and on job execution, spending more time getting this part right, phase 1 and 2, saves time down here, because something that's a small question here, easy to answer, by the time it's down here, there's already commitments made to a certain path. And sometimes when it's based on assumptions, because that question wasn't asked, it is costly and timely to then make a change the further down you get down this line. So, and then, so you have your phases, you have your decisions, who the decision maker is, and then the next thing to do would be to put focus items in each phase. What do you need to work on? And really the thing that drives what a focus item is for a certain phase is the decision maker. I have some defaults, some things I'm used to, some templates where I have a list of things for certain types of projects, because this is applicable to any sort of project across the oil industry or any industry. But really, it is what the decision maker needs to make this decision. That's what you put down as focus items. It might be something that I think is important, but if the decision maker doesn't think it's important, then I can put it off till later, because I shouldn't do that work if it's not going to help the decision maker make a decision. And that's a fairly, and that's how you save a bunch of time and save a bunch of energy in your working. So and so currently, and you can be in, I'm working multiple projects for different places, and each project is in a different phase. Some places I'm the decision maker, and some places I'm a contributor, some places a team leader. That all depends on what the project is and what the core scope is. But this is a very quick way of knowing how far along a project is, and is it more just an idea, or is it actually ready to be built, ready for construction. So the size of project that this is applicable for, like say, I'm currently part of a team. We're doing, $1 billion mega project. We use this process. You can use this process for planning a vacation. You don't have to plan your life using this sort of process, but you can. And now for $1 billion mega project, the list of focus items gets quite long, and for sort of a small home personal sort of project, it can be quite short, and as a way of thinking, again, decision-driven work process can really help you organize your work. So an example that I think, and a lot of times we use this process ourselves, but we don't realize it. So one of the things that triggers me is I really like a good deal. If I can get a good deal on something, I find that enjoyable. And so if I find a good deal on a hotel room, for example, that really gets me excited. Hey, they got a great deal on a hotel room. Hey, why not go on vacation? Which is why the advertising works that way. However, until I saw that it was a good deal, I hadn't thought about going on vacation. So when I go, okay, hotel room cost, where does that fit in if I were to do this as a decision-driven point of view? Well, it's actually down here, detailed design. That's where it belongs. If I were to step back put this in as a project, and you can do this, like say I use a vacation as that's a very small project. I think everyone would agree that that's not, well, for me anyway, that's not a huge capital expenditure, but it is money. You're making time and cost commitment. So if we take a small example, and you can scale this up to uh, as large a project as you like. When I say, oh, I've got a great deal on a hotel room in London, England. Oh, that's really good. But before going there, if I look back here at phase one, identify the opportunity. I guess the opportunity is I've got a hotel room that's cheaper than normal for London that I can book. Well, that's not much of an opportunity. Actually, what I should be looking at for my vacation, how do I want to spend it? So how do I want to enjoy my vacation time? That would be a good opportunity statement in phase one. And then, is this strategically aligned? And who the decision maker is? I'm not ashamed to say that when it comes to planning a vacation, I'm probably not the decision maker, or not the only decision maker here in the house. So I have to be strategically aligned with my partner, with my wife, on what we are going to do on vacation. If I go ahead and book the flights, book the time off because I have a good price hotel in London, and I don't communicate that until we're actually executing, that's probably not a good way to start a vacation. So I want to go back here. What am I trying to do? Am I trying to how much vacation time do I have? What's my budget? What do I want to try and accomplish? That's all this sort of phase one work. Then I go get with the decision maker, and we discuss that together. And so that's another thing that a lot of times happens in projects and in engineering work in the oil industry is project managers, engineers will do a lot of work, and they're doing good work, but they're not always communicating it to their manager or the team. And so they're down here. Sometimes the first time they hear about it is when the request comes in for money, for budget. Well, it is wise and fair to keep people involved early in the process, so that these key decisions, is this strategically aligned? Is this something that we want to do? Or when do we want to do it? If it is, then you go into phase two, create and select alternatives. Yeah, so, okay, I have 2 weeks and I want to relax and do some sightseeing, and I have a budget of $3,000 for 2 people. Okay, those are my phase one numbers. Oops. Then now I can look and create and select alternatives. So alternatives could be, when am I going to go? What places do I find interesting? What places does my wife find interesting? Are we going just the 2 of us? Or is it kids, grandkids? Is it a family vacation? All these how are we going to get there? Are we going to fly? Are we going to drive? Passports, or like outside the country, stay in the country? These are all good things. They can all be fun. There's a lot of alternatives, but then you need to brainstorm them and then select them. What do you value in your alternatives? And a lot of times when you look down at phase 5, what success looks like, that's where it'll help you select your alternatives. So is the best alternative selected? Okay, so you can say, actually, we want to, it's just me and my wife. We want to fly, have a bit of a trip away. We really enjoy Europe, so we want to be in a European city, and we're going to go for a week, and we want it to be warm, but not in high season. So when kids are out of school, so that's either May or say September, and we'd like to do it this year. So now we have a few an alternative that we like, and you can also, you don't have to be exactly nailed down to one. It could be, okay, we want to look at Paris or London, but then at least you're doing the detailed work not on 10 options, but on 2 or 1. So with this example, say we got to the point where we said, okay, actually, we don't want to go to London, we'd rather go to Paris. Well, if you had booked the London flight because you had a cheap hotel room, well, having a cheap hotel room doesn't really heighten your enjoyment when you want to go to Paris. So that's why it's important to spend time in this phase 1 and phase 2. Make sure you're aligned, make sure the alternative works best for the decision maker, and then do your detailed work. So detailed work in this case would be, what flight options do you have? How many stopovers? Do you want to stop at another city along the way? Are you going to do any tours? Are you going to see any plays or sporting events or any speakers, that sort of thing? It's all really good stuff, and it's what people like to talk about when they're planning their travel. It's here in detailed design, all of those focus items. Again, lots of fun, lots of good work. But if you don't get phase 1 and phase 2 figured out, because this is where you're on that high value trend here now. If you book the wrong night at the theater, that's not going to ruin the vacation. If you go to the wrong country, that might. Or I want to go see some art and architecture, but my wife's booked a trip for sitting on the beach. That's not going to end up in success. So you want to be aligned back here and spend time back here, and then do the detailed design. Then, are you ready to execute? Yep. You look, okay, how's the budget looking? Oh yeah, we're a little bit over here because we want to do this and this and add this on. Okay, is that okay? Okay, now you're ready to execute. Okay, execution. Well, I think when I talk about executing a vacation around here, it's a pretty military operation. We have our bags packed. We have everything is organized. All the paperwork is in order. We know where we're going to park the car. We know what time we're going to be there, and contingency for traffic. All that's sorted out here. This is highly efficient execution. And then same thing, getting on the plane, how we're going to do that. Okay, when we get to where we're going, how do we get to the hotel room? Is it taxi? Is it bus? You're executing. And you go do your thing. You do all kinds of, are you going to do extracurricular activities? Are you going to have stuff planned out? Or are you going to make it up as you go? You're all in execution. Okay, is execution complete? Well, you might think for a vacation, that's kind of a silly question. Well, I might think though that we go on vacation, we come back, we fly back, our flight gets delayed somewhere, we have a stopover. Oh, I think we're still on vacation. But my wife might say, "Hey, no, this date was when we got to start working again. We're off vacation now. We're working." Oh, okay. When is it complete? Or same sort of thing. Okay, it's complete when we're back in at home, or is it complete when we start working the next day? Again, this is probably a smaller decision on when it's complete, but it's good to have that clear so there's alignment. Then in phase 5, I think everybody does this automatically. Oh, that was a good trip, or oh, I'd never go there again, or hey, I can't wait to do the when we go back there, I want to do this, this, and this. That's all look back. That's all sort of lessons learned, best practices. What have we learned? And if we had the chance again, would we do more of this or not? Or how would we change it? So that's a very personal, very small project, but you can scale that up to a project team of 5 people, 50 people, 500 people. And that is how, in the oil industry, projects are run. Not like my vacation, but through a gated, decision-based process where you're doing enough work to get to the next phase. Because you could get here a detailed design complete, and your recommendation is we shouldn't do this project. Like that happens because maybe you've learned stuff in your detailed design. Maybe I've learned that, yeah, the hotel is a really cheap rate. The flights are really low price because it is hurricane season, or because there's something going on that there's a high risk that you'll get delayed. Maybe then you say, no, I think we're going to wait. So, or change our plans. You cycle back, start again. That's all time well spent. And okay, good explain, but I wonder, how do you know when you're ready to go to the next phase? Thank you for that. How I know I'm ready to go to the next phase is the decision maker is comfortable going to the next phase. So if I've set out, made it clear who is the decision maker or are the decision maker. So in the vacation example, it could be myself and my wife. We are the decision makers. So it's not until we're both able to answer, is this the best alternative selected? Then we're ready to go forward into the next phase. And some people have, and this is also something that's very interesting, is people have different levels of need for detail. And so sometimes your boss or manager may require less detail than you. So then you don't have to do as much that you think to get to the next phase. Sometimes your manager needs more detail, and it can seem not a lot of fun, but they're the decision maker. They're the person who has to live with the decision. They have to be comfortable with the decision. So the decision maker, you need to have that person comfortable with the decision that they're making. How does it go in a team with multiple people? Again, you can have, so on sizable projects, you can have a a decision review board, and it can be 20, 30 people of different disciplines on a decision review board. And so they'll evaluate whether or not you're ready to go to the next phase. It does eventually, there is a decision maker, but there's a lot of, a review board can have a lot of influence. So yeah, you have to get everyone. Well, the decision maker can, especially when it's a very technical decision, they might have subject matter experts that they're relying on to tell them their opinion on whether something is ready to move forward or not. And so when it's a large team like that and not everyone is aligned, two things will happen. Either it'll probably get recycled back for the project team to do more work to satisfy the subject matter expert or the person who's not on board, or, and again, if it's a more of a minor issue, there could be, okay, 9 out of 10 things are answered, keep going, but as a finding, you still had to finish off this one item. So it's noted as a finding. You go through the gate, but you have a finding. So, but again, if you know who your decision makers are, if you know who the decision review board is, then it usually goes, usually is fairly unanimous, or there's a general feel of whether people are comfortable going with the decision or not. I would say this is not a sales job. This is you're trying to inform the decision maker with the best information that you have at the time. And of course, at phase one, you're going to have limited information. And so the decision maker knows that. You can't, and so typically cost estimates and time estimates, when you're ready for AFE, it's usually plus or minus 10% is the expectation that you have probably quotations in from people. You have a fairly tight estimate on cost and time. Here it's probably plus or minus 30% after phase two. Phase one, plus or minus 50, plus or minus 100. Like you have it in the right range, in the right ballpark. And that's why things can change. But really, because and the value in doing that is, if I'm estimating the value of a project at from $1 million to 2 million, you can make $1 million on this project. If the decision maker says, okay, yeah, but I have 5 other projects that can make more than that, I'm not interested in this, then you know, no matter what alternatives you looked at, no matter what work you did, you would never get it above 2 million. You've saved yourself and your company a lot of effort to work this out. Better to know up front if someone is not strategically aligned. Can you see in phase 5 if you have made a good or bad decision, or not always? Well, good question, because not always, I would say, because for phase 5, you know when execution is complete. Oh, you've decided that you've agreed. Okay, sometimes it's first oil, sometimes it's on when the well is TD'd, or when a major piece of equipment is installed, or when it's started up. So you have, we've completed this project, and then the project team can have their party. They executed safely and on budget. Great. Sometimes, especially in, say, asset development, new greenfield developments, it can take years before you know if the work that you did here is actually resulting in say, the reserve recovery that you expected. It can take years for you to figure out were the outcomes what I expected. But I think it is fairly easy is the wrong word, but I think it's hard to know the exact numbers at some points, but I think that intuitively you have a feeling for if a project has resulted in a positive outcome or a neutral or negative outcome. That's usually fairly early in the piece, or fairly early in this phase 5. And you can also define in phase 5 what are the key things, focus items that you need to make that decision. But I think that I would say, 9 times out of 10, 90% of the time, when this phase 5, when a project is not successful, it is almost always because in phase 1 and 2, things weren't aligned in the early phases. Detailed design and execution are it's important, and there's a lot of focus, especially on execution in health and safety and making sure that no one gets hurt. That's a priority. But as far as project outcomes go, the potential outcome of the project is decided early on in the early phases. So if you have a good project and it is executed poorly, you're still probably going to have a good outcome. If you have a poor project executed well, it's still going to be kind of a poor project. So, and I go back to my vacation analogy. If in planning the vacation, there was strategic alignment on what the goal of the vacation was, if that fits, then a lot of stuff can go wrong. When you get to the end, you say, "Oh, I don't want to do that again." You might say, "I don't want to go to that hotel again," or "I don't want to take that airline again," or "I wouldn't do this again." But you're thankful of the experience that you had when you're strategically aligned. If you're not strategically aligned, or you didn't agree with the alternative that was selected early on, doesn't matter how good the food was at the restaurant, you're probably going to find it to be a bad decision at the end. So, yeah, and I think part of phase 1, a good thing to do is, what does success look like? If you can define what success looks like or feels like, that usually will really set the direction for the project. One of the in a planning meeting years ago, I think it was right around 2001. I was in a project meeting, and we're trying to figure out, okay, are we ready to do this project? Do we have the right alternative selected? And one of the questions that the asset manager at the time, he asked was, okay, if we do this project, and we were still early in the piece, if we do this project this year, I think it was, I don't know, drilling 10 wells in Western Canada. He said, okay, if we're going to do this year, and we do it, a year later, what would it look like if we had a complete failure? What would that look like? And he said, and what would it look like if we said, hey, this is a smashing success. A year after we did this project, what does it look like? And that really stuck with me, because if you can imagine what success looks like for something, then and especially if it's early on, if you can imagine, okay, this is what, and define, if this, then the project is a success, or the work that I'm doing is a success, then it's going to be easy to know, even before phase 5, if if you've been made good, I read good or bad decision, but if you've had a successful project. And because I think you can make bad decisions down here and still have a successful project. If you make a bad decision back here, it's hard to get back on track to the rest of this work. So, I gave a small example, like a small project example, but the idea here is, now, I mean, if you want to eat an apple, go ahead and eat an apple. You don't want to spend your whole every second for small decisions to do this. But if you're going to plan your personal vacation, or plan what you're going to work on, like for your development goals and career path and that sort of stuff, this is a great way to progress even personal goals. And because oil companies around the world, they do use this for a reason. When you're spending billions of dollars in capital, you take this phase gate approach, this decision-based work, and it's proven to have the best results. There's probably other ways to do it, but this is a very can be very effective, and difficult, I think, for personalities to take it over and force it through. I will make one shortfall in this this method of project execution is detailed design. So in this graph, detailed design is here, and then the decision is made to execute. A lot of times there might be the issue with that is a lot of equipment in the oil industry can be long lead items. You make a decision today to do this, you can't get it the next day. So there's different supply chains, different ways of optimizing that. But one of the things that you will see is sometimes there'll be a long lead AFE placed. So even though the project is not completely approved, in order to keep things to minimize the time, is an approval for long leads, so that those orders can be placed and then the equipment can show up when execution is ready. However, project teams know, even though that order is placed, if this doesn't get approved, that's a cost that's put in, that's at risk, because the project doesn't go ahead until it actually gets approval. So, and then the stuff could be restocked or used on another project, something like that. So, but that is a bit of a shortfall in this, is that a lot of times you do have, because of the nature of equipment ordering in the oil industry, especially through more traditional sources, the lead times are excessive. So there is sometimes a long lead order required. Ideally, you get this decisions as close to this sort of execution decision as possible. So, question in here. Sounds like phase 1 is important. Although the oil industry is high capital intensive and needs to control risks, my question is, in which phase carries the highest risk for projects? I would say, yeah, good question. Really good question. Again, so when you're talking about safety, environmental, well, personal safety execution. Well, I would say execution, or here in the phase 5, because phase 5 you've handed over to operations. So this in phase 4, this is where you are, by its very nature, executing. You've got a lot of equipment, a lot of activities, physical activities happening. That's sort of the definition of execution. So there, and you'll see it in the project team, that's where health and safety, environment, support, and attention. That's, I would say, almost everybody on a project team, the focus always then shifts to HSE. Because during detailed design, there's less risk on a health, safety, environment. However, again, my experience is that back here in phase 1, and I think more phase 2, I think is a pretty critical one for health and safety. I've seen a big impact. If you have a health and safety person or team, health, safety, environment team, or a risk advisor engaged in these early phases, I think that really helps in selecting the alternative, because a lot of times stuff can get missed when you're selecting alternatives, especially on the risk side, that don't show up until later. And so you put a big amount of effort in here when really there might have been a way to limit the risk by what alternative you selected. So I think I talk about capital allocation, costs, and time, but risk can be treated exactly the same. If you can identify the risk early, or the risks, and when you look at alternatives, how the different alternatives handle risk, that's again, I think, is the most value, and because then if you execute a low risk project poorly, it's still low risk. If you execute a high risk project with excellence, it's still a high risk project. So and sometimes it can't be avoided. There's risk in, we have to handle risk. The earlier we can start working it and start thinking about it, the better the impact, for sure. So and apologies for talking capital and time, but risk is capital and time. So yeah, I would say phase 4 is the highest risk. Phase 1, phase 2 is where you can have the biggest influence on risk. So can't underplay that enough. Okay, well, if that's it for the questions for this evening, I'll wrap it up a few minutes early, and I hope to see everybody. And yeah, if you have any other questions, please continue to submit them. You can email them in. You can email me at rod@ballycatter.com, BALLYCATTER, if you have any questions or any other topics you'd like to discuss. And otherwise, see you again.